safe, both in the physical and the virtual world. And a happy holiday in advance. I know Philippines celebrates Christmas a little bit earlier, which is good for everyone. So today is a heavy subject, right? When it comes to cybersecurity, it's always heavy, right? We're trying to protect ourselves from the bad guys, right? So let me start off with sharing with you some of the key analysis that we did in terms of how businesses are looking at security in today's world, right? Things are changing very rapidly as the way that the pandemic has been affecting the business. So I think this is not new, right? And is really heavily reinforced. For those of you who have attended, a couple of my sessions, you realize that I talk a lot about the applications that we use, and our family use, right? My wife shops online a lot. Today, almost 80% of what I buy is online, right? So in a lot of businesses mind today, right? In a smarter business, smarter world, in line with the team, right? Businesses, CIOs, CEOs are looking at what can be delivered digitally, must be delivered digitally first, right? So, and that is changing the way that things are being done, right? So in Cisco, so the world has changed, business are changing. One of the key things and the key takeaway for the session is, for the audience is, we are changing the way we work, the way we live. Businesses are changing. Now, the key questions that, I have always asked customers, partners, is that what about your cybersecurity, right? And it's unfortunate that, a lot of the businesses treat cybersecurity as a aftermath, right? And it is becoming a major challenge, right? If you've seen the news today, there are a lot more cyber attacks, businesses going out of business, right? From a single ransomware attack or a single cyber attack that stole the whole customer database, etc. Right? It is scary. It is on the headline, and it is the more challenging part is it is real, right? So that is one key part of the trend. And one of the key asks is really, what about your cybersecurity strategy? What are you doing to protect your people and your greatest assets, right? So hopefully I'll be able to share some insights, right? With a survey that we've done globally, across 5,100 security professional, right? And one of the key things that we realized today, right, with so much things happening, right, with so much threat happening, a lot of the businesses are looking at security from a outcome perspective, right? I remember starting my career 20 years ago, and we were talking about feature, functionality, compliance, etc. Right? It is still important, but what is more important, right, is what is the outcome my security solution is going to drive today, right? And the survey that we done, right, you can get the report from cisco.com/go security outcomes 2, right? And this is the second report that we have done recently, right? For those of you who are more interested, you can visit the website. There are a lot more insights that you can see across, global APJC, in terms of what the businesses are looking at. I think nothing has changed in terms of business focus, right? The first thing is, how do I keep up with the business changes, the demand of the business as competition goes online, digitally, on the website, or with a mobile app, right? How do I keep that business running and improving, right? And that has not changed, right? As long as you're running a business, it is always about how do I make sure that businesses, continue to be profitable, continue to strive, right? And then more importantly, right? And the biggest challenge with security professional, right, especially your with the CISOs, is really gaining the trust for execs, right? Obtaining buy-in from businesses, right? And create a strong culture. And the bottom line of all this is really getting the budget that you need, right, to protect the business, right? Security is like insurance policies today, right? You're hoping that you are not the one being targeted. However, you want to make sure that you are protected, you're insured, right? You have some form of tools, solution, strategy in place to make sure that you're protected. And in the event, unfortunate event, right, which is becoming real and becoming more prevalent, is in the unfortunate event that something does happen, right? Something bad does happen, a cyber attack or a cyber breach happens, how are you prepared, right? And more importantly, how do you limit the impact so that your businesses continues to be able to function and to grow, right? And one of the key things, right, in terms of security, and with the regulations, with the digital community, with the hybrid environment, and with cloud coming in, right, the whole landscape has changed tremendously. In the early days, it's really about on-prem, right? 80% of my application, 90% of my setup are on-premise, right? Today, we're seeing that shift changing very, very quickly, right? You are seeing half, or even for those smaller businesses that are starting up online digitally, 80% of it is starting from a cloud or a SaaS perspective, right? How do I look at maintaining cyber risks, keeping my cyber risk low, making sure that compliance is in place, not to help you or not to make it easier, right? PDPA, personal data protection, all these things are making it harder, right, to manage risk. And on top of all this, right, how do a CISO, right, or how do a security lead, or how do even a CIO plan a program, a effective security program, right, to help battle and address the security outcome as we talk about, right? Enabling businesses, managing risk, operational efficiency, and what we're seeing driving more adoption to cloud is really how do I keep my businesses up 24/7 online in the digital world, right? And that, in my point of view, right, is really a lot more important than the initial project, because you might put a lot more resources in implementation, but when it comes to managing and operating it, the resources are usually a lot more tighter. They need to do a lot more, right? I mean, if you buy a car, right, a sports car, right, for example, right, you spend a lot on it. However, if you don't spend enough in maintaining, in tuning, right, very soon what happens is your car is not going to function the way it is bought or the way that it is intended to do. Similar to security, right, it's a lot more complex than a car, right? But if you buy a security solutions, if you look at upfront the impact that you want to basically address, but do not look at the overall outcome in terms of enabling business, managing risk, and operating it. The question is, are you able to keep up with the threat that is happening today? So based on that research and based on the outcome that the security team in the customers and the partner environment seeks to address, we have basically make it a little bit easier into bite size so that you can digest, right? And the top 5 practices for cybersecurity today that a lot of the businesses are looking at is really key. Number 1, proactive tech refresh, right? And unfortunately, in that area, security has always been the least of a focus or at least of a concern, right? And once you put it in a security product, you might not have the visibility, or you might think that it's working well, you leave it there until something happens and you realize that, oh, I've not patched, or I've not updated my technology, or I've not updated certain requirements in the cybersecurity arena or in the businesses that allow a cyber attack or a cyber criminal to come in, right? So that is a key thing that we are seeing, that customers are paying attention, right? And in line with the way that things are being done, right, moving business into the cloud, there is an increased focus in whether my technology, right, is sufficient, right, is keeping up with trend, right? And with hybrid environment, how does the security solutions works on-prem and cloud becomes key, right? How do I integrate, right? The good thing about SaaS and cloud is that it is up almost 24/7. It is very easy to get started. However, every company, right, has their own way of defining the integration, right? So one of the key things that a lot of people are looking at today is how do I integrate my technology, both on-prem and the cloud, right? And one thing that in line with, threat intelligence, right, is how do I then with, refresh technology integration, look at timely incidents response. It's one thing that you put a very good lock in front of your door. It's another that if you don't monitor, if there are stranger trying to come into your house, right? How do you look at all these challenges and mitigate, right, in a timely manner, right? And the one key things that always ties together, right, which is disaster recovery, right? So one of the domain of CSSP, as we all know, is also availability, right? And security should not be a prohibitor. It should not be there to hamper access to the resources to the business you are looking at, right? And everything in place, the whole idea of the outcome is really accurately detect the threat, right? If you have heard of, logs fatigue, alerts fatigues, you know what I'm talking about, right? There are a lot of alerts, there are a lot of logs coming in. How do I make use of security solution, right? Looking at the enabler for the business and provide minimum false positive, right? So these are some of the key things, right, that the businesses are looking at today from a cybersecurity, from a threat intelligence perspective. How do I combine those two and help to make sure that the business continues to strive, continues to be protected, right? So you can read a lot more in the details, in the report itself. But one of the key things that is changing, as mentioned, right? Outdated distributed on-prem, right, solutions are a key part of a challenge, right? Today, only 36% of the businesses, right, are still running on outdated distributed on-prem solution based on the survey, and 82% are going on moving to the cloud or already on the cloud, right? So if you are still on the on-prem legacy model, right, unless of course you're in the government segment and you can't move things to cloud that much, right? Any other businesses, if you're not looking at that in terms of tech refresh or proactively looking at utilizing the SaaS model, the cloud model, that is something that you might want to take a look at, right? And see how you can save time from operational downtime and put time and money back to your business, right? Keeping up the business, right? One of the things that the digital world has changed is that if you look at your apps, right, just by your banking apps or your gaming apps on your phone, right, the update cycle for application is, if I'm not saying it as monthly, it is at least quarterly, right, versus the annual upgrades in the past for a website, right? So if your business needs to be updated quarterly, monthly, or even weekly, depending on which segment you're on, right, are your security solution keeping up with it, right? It sounds scary, it sounds like a lot of work, it sounds like a lot of cost, right? However, there are simple steps that you might want to look at, as you embark in this journey in terms of creating a smarter business for yourself, right? In terms of technology, people, and process, right? One of the key things that is not, excuse me, is a luxury for a lot of people is having a SecOps team, right? So a lot of the smaller commercial business might not have it, right? And that is why it is more important, right, to look at cybersecurity from a combined people, process, and technology, right? And it's always interesting to hear smaller businesses say, says, I do not have the people, I do not have the process in place, therefore, I can't afford to invest in technology. The contrary to that is actually the other way around, right? If you do not have enough people and not a good or a well-developed process in place, it is actually more important, right, to leverage on technology to help you achieve that stronger posture. And we'll look at a little bit on how some simple steps, that you can take to get that in place, right? It is something that we all know, right? Information is king, right? Information is important, right? one of the key things that a lot of customers, when they are looking at solutions, tends to, have some oversight is that, uh, they do not realize that, right, the technology you are buying today, right, can only be as intelligent, whether it's from an artificial intelligence perspective, process perspective, or people perspective. The technology can only be as effective, especially in the security field, right, based on the threat intelligence that the solution provides to you, right? I said that the unsung heroes, at the background, right? So threat intelligence is one of the key things, and companies are starting to realize, right? How do I consolidate information, right? Logs, right? And as well as leveraging on the threat intelligence that the vendor is providing, so that you can, without spending additional effort and time to try and figure out what is the problem, what is the cyber attack, leveraging on, the vendors that already has this in place behind the scene integrated into the product. And I'll share with you a website later, right? If you're not familiar with, where you can get free information if you're not a Cisco customers. But if you are a Cisco customers, what are the security threats that you are protected, right, at the back end, right? It's something that we don't really talk a lot about, but it's something that is crucial and key, right? So, and the last part of this, research is really about automation, right? Apologies for the fonts. I think the colors came out a little bit dark, but I'll get that fixed, and then I guess the slides will be shared with you, right? So, with the challenge of people, and especially qualified security people, right? The importance of automation is more relevant today, right? And one thing that we all know, right? Unless you have a very strong and big SecOps team, right? Automation is always going to be tough, because you need to basically be trying to piece together information so that you can make sense of the information and tune and automate some of the events, right? An example, right? We talk about, for those of you who are familiar with Cisco SecureX, right? The solution integrates M for endpoint protection, covering XDR, right? Web security, CASB, protecting DNS traffic, web protection against phishing, malicious malware, email security, right? Now, if you do not know who is attacking you and from which vector, in my example, endpoint, web, right? How are you going to automate and say that when I get an attack, right? Somebody trying to send you a phishing email to get a user to download a malware to the computer so that they can invoke or activate a campaign of ransomware or information stealing. How are you going to automate that process, right? To say that when I see an unusual activity coming in from a blacklisted country, I'm going to just give an example, not real. Like, for example, Singapore, might be a place whereby a lot of the cyber attack for some of the campaign is happening, right? And then you start seeing that, emails coming from a malicious or a, bad company, situated here in Singapore. And then you realize that, there are links that are being sent to your users. And more importantly, the users are clicking on the link and it is sending you to a website, right? Somewhere, hosted in another country, for example. Now, if you don't have that visibility, how can you then automate, right, the block to say that I want to block and move the email maybe to a spam box so that my user don't even see it, right? So it gets, filter out. And then when they try to click on the link, right, automated action, right, happens on the back end to block that, right? So simple things like this, detection and automating, right? So how do we then leverage on technology to help us achieve that? Okay, so in terms of the challenges, right? That's on a high level, that's on a research perspective, but more importantly, right now when we move it into a more granular look, right? We all know the challenges, right? It's not a new slide, but a summary of what I'm sharing here is that to protect your business, right? And to enable business, right? The biggest assets is people. And in our current situation, remote workers. So how do I, as a business, as a security professional, as a security team, ensure that I cover people, right? Accessing the information, application, the device that they're coming in from, differentiate between sensitive on-prem information and cloud related offering and data stored on the cloud. How do I lower the risk exposure, knowing that, you know, my CEO wants to go digital and, you know, his concern is data safe, right? How do I know protection is there for these workers that have access to the data? How do I look at what are the data, what are the information they have access to, and wrap around a security strategy to control and protect access, right? And more importantly, we are working, you know, remotely. It could be at home or could be, you know, a coffee place if, you know, the coffee or the cafe is open up, right? And when you are connecting to a unknown Wi-Fi, right? How do you know that you're protected, right? And that you are not connecting to a malicious website? There are things like this, just name a few, right? But there are a lot more, right? How do we then look at, you know, protecting the users? It's a lot to start off with, but there are a few key basic things that you can look at, right? So in terms of when you're doing a tech refresh, right? When you're looking at security as a part or as a partnership with the business, right? To gain the trust from the other business unit, to gain buy-in and get a budget. The first thing that you probably need to look at is that today, do you have the ability to identify and establish trust, right? So it's easy to control when the data is on-prem. I would say easy, it's easier to control. But then when it goes to the cloud, that's the same kind of ability to make sure that you are who you are and you can access to the information and the device that you're coming in from is trusted, right? When you have that base in place, then it makes it easier to say that I want to start my business, start my application, hosting a server in my office, or I'm going to take out my credit card, right? For a very small business, you just take out a credit card and spin off an instance in the cloud architecture, right? Whether it's Microsoft, Google, AWS, etc., right? So that is one key part, right, to really look at. And that's why if you look at MFA, is actually becoming a key areas for a lot of company. And the reason why is because with MFA, you know, with, you know, multi-factor authentications and the dual solution that Cisco offer, you look at things like how do I provide MFA, how do I check and look at the device, the health of the device, whether it's patched, it's updated. It's a very good and easy technology to adopt quickly, to just basically make sure that your parameters are being protected and address the challenge of the parameter no longer being just in your office. It could be anywhere, right? And then with that, you can then look at other things like how do I then allow VPN access? How do I not need VPN access? Because when you have that ability to identify users and device trust, you know, it's easier to map out a strategy to say that what device have access to the data that you are protecting, right? And that helps to minimize a lot of the threats, right? Password theft, unauthorized access, right? These are common threat, vectors, right? Regardless of the campaign, you will realize that compromising of identity, stealing of data is still the two key part of the cyber attack, especially in the business world, right? So therefore, it's important to start off with something simple like this, and then merge it into a single platform to look at security. But more importantly, right, as we talk about SASE today, it's still a key area, right? It's a very broad framework by Gartner, but it's still a key area to say that how do I extend security control? More importantly, the connection of network, whether it's software-defined wide area network or MPLS network. How do I ensure that security control is in place while I ensure that the connectivity and the performance is in place, and have the ability to look at or have a converged view of that, right? Because No man is an island. And more importantly, if you look at one of the key area of focus is disaster recovery, BCP, right? So security and network needs to now come together and look at it, right? So nothing new in terms of SASE use case, but it's really just to reinforce and share and highlight, right? I always believe in the things that, when you say something or repeat something enough, right? Hopefully it helps to change or improve the way things are done, right? Secure remote work, secure edge, right? So in a very simple nutshell, it's talking about how do I protect my remote workers that are working on site? How do I ensure I protect the same worker that are going back to office where the secure edge comes in, the branch office, and have a consistent access to the resources? Same kind of control, right? But more importantly, reduce the choke of the network, right? When I am accessing it from an office or from home. Why? Right? And the very simple answer is, with you sitting here in front of the screen, looking at, a webinar with video going on, right? Video and voice traffic are known to be bandwidth hungry application, right? So how do I make sure that I keep my network performance up optimum for both office, remote worker, at the same time ensuring a uniform policy to control and protect the people and the data, right? So that is really, really in terms of how we look at from a starting point for a SASE use case, right? For those of you who are familiar with Cisco, right, we have a suite of solution in place, and it's the good thing about Cisco in this aspect is really about, having a few technology that is required, right? I would say we are one of the most complete vendor out there that provides, right? Whether you are looking at data center, we are looking at network, you are looking at application performance and security. And to my point, visibility is key, right? Having the ability to have similar product, and you'll see in my later sharing that in an environment, right, whether you are on the network, it's really about how do I protect in a secure edge environment or a secure edge story. How do I make sure that my branch is protected? And you will notice, right, the technology used, whether you are doing a secure edge and branch protection use case, the technology used are very, very similar. It's not the full set of technology that we have, but start off with this because these are the easiest to start off with and will help you to get the highest or the most visibility, right? In terms of the web access that you are going to allow your user to continue to have access, the identity, right? Who you say you are, the device that you trust, right? In that aspect, are you ensuring that only the right person is allowed to access the data, right? And then with SD-WAN, whether you are looking at a very quick and easy way to get an SD-WAN environment startup, where Meraki comes in. A lot of retail, commercial customers love it because of the simplicity. Or you might be, an enterprise customers, even a bank, a government, a financial institution that needs a lot more granular control. Viptela is there, right? If you like to be hands-on, you like to tweak things, both options are there. And that's one of the key things that you don't really see out there in the market today, right? You either see an extreme of, complex or extreme of overly simplified, right? And that's where Cisco comes in, whereby the technology allows you to deploy your solution and quickly, remember, refresh the technology, especially when you look at Umbrella, Duo, Meraki. All these are born or developed or nurtured or improved in the cloud, which means that you have minimum hardware requirement. But of course, we still need your router, we still need your, MX, hardware that needs to be placed on prem. However, saying that all the management, all the software patches, updates are now driven from cloud, which takes away a lot of the time, right? And helps you to manage resources, right? I remember 20 years back, usually 80% of my time is trying to get things in place, do patch fixes, right? And these days, with whether it's MS Tuesday or any of other patches that are coming up, right? The number of patches and threads are increasing. So time are almost not our friend anymore when it comes to managing technology. And therefore, having solutions like this in place that gives you security, SD-WAN capability, and more importantly, one of the key things that are also coming up and becoming very, very key is the ability to see traffic and to look at performance, right? Both for your internal employees, which is in my term, your customers as well, if you are in the IT side of team and you're supporting the employees, or from a application. You could be launching a great app, right, that are drawing millions of users going to the website. Now, do you have that visibility to see that when something is slow or goes wrong? Is it because of SD-WAN, connectivity performance? Is it because of security? Or is it because of application, right? So the set of solutions to basically enable a smarter business, right, can start off with just a few of this, right? It is not all the product you need, right, to get to the optimum condition, but it starts off with this product to protect your branch and to protect the information where it's stored, whether it's public, private, SaaS, internet, right, with a simple set solution like this. And the best part is when you start off this with an edge and a branch office, right, the same technology that we talk about can be used for your remote user, right? The requirements, interestingly, right, it used to be security on-prem is very, very important, more important than remote users. In today's context, it has changed almost completely, right? Especially for the modern organization, because half of your apps, or if not more of your application, are no longer in your office. It's in the cloud, right? So the amount of protection that are needed on the on-premise is still important, but what is lacking in a lot of organization is the ability to extend a similar kind of protection for the remote worker, right? And simple technologies, as you see here, MFA, AnyConnect for VPN, web protection, and if you have not have XDR or endpoint in place, right, do take a look at it. I've not stressed or add that in because today you should have an endpoint protection in place. And more importantly, your endpoint protection should ideally, right, be consolidated. You can integrate the threats, the attacks, the logs from the endpoint or XDR, right, protection into your overall security strategy. And that's why it is important to look at it from a wider perspective, right? So if you don't have that endpoint protection, you don't have a consolidated view before your endpoint, email, and web security, it is good time to talk to us or to reach out to your local Cisco partners or these or the team in Philippines. Right. So you've seen the Secure Edge story, Secure Edge use case, right? As you can see, the same set of technology we spoke about can be now used to extend that same protection, right, with Umbrella and Duo and Thousand Eyes for visibility to your remote worker. One thing that I'm actually seeing, company businesses in some part of the world, right, even providing a Meraki MX, right, to their home user or to their critical home user. Why? Because with that in place, they extend the same kind of security that you'd get on the branch office or on your head office into the hands of your employee at home. So bear in mind, right, because we are doing home learning today with our kids. We are doing shopping, we're doing a lot more things on our home network, right? And not to mention the IoTs, the intelligent devices that are connected. So it might be a good choice and a good advice for employees, right, when they're doing their work, right, to basically be behind MX technology that protects them and have the same policy apply, right? So simple things like this, the outcome that you want to basically address from a user perspective, you want to protect them. From a IT team perspective, you want to enable the IT team with that limited resource to have the ability, right, to have a single vendor, a single platform to get a couple of the important touch points: performance, control, policy, risk management, performance visibility into one solution, into one partner that can look at this and help you protect it, and a vendor, right, that you can go in. And that helps to greatly reduce, if you remember one of my points, the need or the challenge of integrating multiple technologies from multiple vendors. And that in the long run will definitely help save resources and time. Right. So, like I mentioned, summarizing a few key parts of the solutions, the challenges, really very important, right? Today, you can't get onto a plane without a proper passport. Why should you allow access to your business data, which is in today's standpoint, right? Information is king, right? You need to protect the information. Why would you allow somebody to access your data without verifying the identity? If you have not started the journey on Duo for Cisco's partners, right? Do look at it, right? With that, you are then able to look at how do I secure the access to the data, right? And only give enough data to people or to employees so that they can complete their job. And bottom line is, how do I defend against threats, right? And a lot of time we don't correlate all these things. Remember, when you do your security well, your businesses are well protected. The disruption downtime to the business are also a lot more protected, and uptime is greatly increased. So in terms of technology solutions, a few notes here, right? Just for you to take a look at it. At the end of the day, Cisco, I always joke, right? I've never known Cisco to be, a very security-centric company before I joined Cisco. When I joined Cisco, I was shocked that we have security solutions from networking, endpoint, web, automation, application. You name it, we most likely have something in place. And that's the reason why I have put down a few so that you might be able to start off your analysis and your research on what are the technologies that you can look at, right? So couple of call to action, but before that, let me just quickly share. For those of you who've seen my presentation, I usually try to do a demo, but today, more importantly, I'm going to just show you a few things, right? So for those of you who do not know that Cisco has or is the largest threat intelligence or commercial threat intelligence company out there, it's a good time to take a look at it, right? So this is the dashboard for Talos Intelligence, which is Cisco, right? Without being a Cisco customer, that's why I'm not logging, you'll get access to reports in terms of what are the current trends. We look at emails, we look at web traffic. If you want to go to software challenges, vulnerability, you get that. And it goes in to tell you what are the technologies, what are the open source capabilities that you can actually use for your lab environment, etc. There are a lot of things that Cisco has. Cisco built, Cisco sees, right? And it is it's not very well advertised. Oops, sorry. I realized that I did not share this slide. So this is the Cisco Talos website, like I've mentioned, right? You get a lot of intel. We see billions of email traffic, web traffic globally, right? And because we work with service provider, we have one of the largest, telco network connection, equipment in place, right? We see a lot of threats that you don't see. So this is a free website that anybody can go to look at vulnerability, to look at threats, right? But more importantly, right, that is not correlated, that's not, explained well enough or talk about well enough, is that all the security solution that Cisco provides today, there is a automation, there is an AI, and there is a team of threat analysts sitting behind the scene to make sure that you are protected against the cyber attack that is happening daily, hourly, every minute, every second, right? So that is one key thing, right? You want to be able to deploy a solution, right? And have the confidence that you are protected, because at the back end of all the security solution is the largest threat intelligence network in the world, right? Making sure that without you having to create a manual blacklist or without you having to manually tune your product, it is up and running and is protecting you. For those more security inclined or more security hands-on company, you can, right, add on your custom list as you need. But for commercial small businesses, this is what you need, right? You need someone behind the scene automatically helping you with the protection, even the automation in terms of blocking, in terms of prevention, right? So that is one key area to look at. And one thing that everybody is trying to jump in today is the ability to look at API, right? If you're not looking at API, that means that you are lacking behind in terms of how fast you can get the business up and running, how fast, right, you can automate some of these things, right? API is something that you cannot avoid today. And Cisco does have a dev network, right? If you talk about DevSecOps today, all our security solutions out there today, right? And the best part is it's not just security. Look at the amount of platforms that we have. You can come to Cisco and have most of the things that you require to run and to operate the business. And one thing I always like as a security professional, there are open source things available as well for me to play around in as well. And that, but more importantly, the security API capabilities that are available today, whether it's your Meraki, your MX, your Firepower, your Umbrella and stuff, you can actually write an easy script, right, using Python or integrate into your MSSP or MSC portal if you're MSSP or MSP provider, right? And that is one key area that is going to be a game changer, right? Because instead of waiting for that feature, that button to be built on the product page itself, right, there's most likely an API whereby you can call and integrate it into the centralized management platform that you use, right? So it is a subject for a longer session, but just to give you an idea in terms of what you should look at, right? Especially to create a smarter business and to enable your business today, centralized intelligence, threat intelligence, ability to look at DevNet, DevSecOps, right? Or those are the key things that you should look at to future-proof your investment, right? So with that, a couple of call to action, right? If you're not started, really, don't wait. It's always good to plan. It's better to plan to fail than to fail to plan. Relook at your cybersecurity strategy and solution, right? It's hard. It might be tough. Do reach out to us. We can always help walk the journey with you, right? Ensure you have protection needed for your evolving business need, right? You change your business application, you change a lot of things, right? Why not make sure that you keep your security technology up to date, right? Don't have a very beautiful house with the best technology and you're still using a metal lock, for example, right? If your business is growing, right, at least make sure that the sufficient protection for your security is in place. Protect your employees and assets, right? Those are the two things that runs a business. A good business idea cannot run without people, without information, without your IP, right? So start the journey. Start protecting your employees and your assets today. If you have not done it, if there are gaps, do reach out to us. Let's work in partnership to make sure that, we build a smarter world and a smarter business that contributes to that evolution. With that, I've come to the end of my presentation.